Welcome to course 102 in Pete McConville's School of Not So Obvious Watch Collecting. Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches, and my second in a series of an undetermined number of videos talking about how we can be slightly better watch collectors. These first couple of classes, if you like, are quite introductory. In fact, like most uni classes in first year, they barely touch on the thing that made you want to join the course in the first place, in this case watches, and instead we're going to be talking mostly about ourselves, getting ourselves ready to understand and buy watches as best as we can. These introductory courses are kind of based on the 3 Delphic maxims. So far I've done Know Thyself. That was the previous video, go see that one. This one is on the second of those maxims, nothing to excess, which can be easier understood, perhaps better applied if you reverse that from the negative to the positive and say everything in moderation. Either way kind of works. So on one level, that's actually a pretty easy thing to understand. And most people, most YouTubers say the same thing. Effectively, what they're saying is, don't get into too much debt. You can't eat a watch, you can't live in a watch, you can't drive to work in a watch. If buying if buying these watches gets in the way of you or your family eating, having a place to live, or driving to or from work or school, then you're doing something to excess. Slow that down a bit, please. But that's not really very helpful. Most of you will know that already. I don't think that helps us much as a watch collector. I think that there's another 2 readings of that expression, of that aphorism, that is useful to us. The first is on a very macro scale. Let's not take this hobby to excess. Please remember, we're just watch collecting. No one's curing cancer. No one's solving third world hunger here. We are collecting watches. Let's not get too wrapped up around the axle about this. Let's just calm down. And no matter how exciting we think it is, A, we aren't going to change the world, and B, most other people will simply start backing away slowly if we get too excited in a discussion with them. So the first thing I would say about not taking this whole hobby to excess is, let's just cool our jets a little bit and always remind ourselves it's just a hobby, they're just watches, this is supposed to be fun. As soon as it stops being fun, you've kind of lost the point of why you're here in the first place. Okay, so that part done. I also think that the expression, or the maxim, nothing to excess, has a more, I'll say, inwards focus when it comes to watch collecting. And even though in some ways it's a simpler aphorism or a simpler maxim, I think it's important that it comes after the first one of Know Thyself. In Know Thyself, what I said was, know who you are, know what makes you happy. Is it movements? Great, you know that. Is it the country that something comes from? Great, you know that. Is it that other people, that there's a community around that kind of watch and you'd like to be part of that community? All of those things are great things to know, and they will really help focus you. I think what we need to remember is, don't go overboard on that. Congratulations, it's really good that you figured out what it is that you like. You really figured out that what's important to you is, for example, the history of a brand, and that you really like that history being part of your story and part of the narrative. That's fantastic, that's great. But at the same time, don't go too far. Always remember, for example, with that history, there can be parts of the history that you might not like. There might be parts of that history which, quite frankly, you find out later are a little bit confected. You might find that there's parts of that history that even the link between today's brand, which may have been bought or sold several times, and the brand back then, that historical link might not be as strong as you thought it was, and over investing in that might be a bit much. And you might end up finding that you end up buying watches that have great stories, but fundamentally you don't really like very much, and end up living in the back of your watch box, never being used. Likewise, you can take the same thing for movements, you can take the same thing for accuracy, you can say the same thing for case design or bracelets or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It's great that you know what you're into, but at the same time, never make that everything that you're into. Never use that as a way of excluding everything else. Remember, everything in moderation. You like value watches? Great. Get good value watches, but don't buy watches that fundamentally you don't like very much solely because they're good deals. You like to have lots of watches. Great, fantastic. Keep your watch buying a little bit lower. Buy more watches rather than less expensive watches. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you have to buy a new watch every week just so you get that dopamine hit of spending money. Know the difference between the you liking to have a lot of watches and liking to spend money often. Those are two different things. And I suppose that's really what I would say. And it's a simple lesson, but there's an important reason why it comes after the first one. After the first lesson, you should have sat down and sort of thought to yourself, what's important to me, what's not, what am I going to count, what am I not going to count. This second lesson is really quite short, goes on the back of that and says, now that you know what you're into, let's just not get too carried away. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. Hit the like and subscribe button. I'm supposed to say that as a YouTuber. I don't do wristwatch checks. If you want to see what watches I own, what watches I wear, etc., go check me out on Instagram at not.so.obvious.watches. Leave a comment down below. You'll notice if you do look in the comments, I respond to an awful lot of them. I try and read at least every comment. In fact, no, that's not true. I read every single comment. Sometimes I won't get a chance to reply because A, you might not have left me much else to say, or B, frankly, as the comments are growing, I just can't answer every single one. But rest assured, I read every single comment that someone leaves. Anyway, thanks very much, and I'll see you later. Bye.